Welcome, BBCs, to episode number 235 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one League of Legends solo queue educational and motivational podcast. Curtis, diving straight into some heat, to some fire from our Ludwig episode. There was a Reddit post from someone on the jungle mains. This is not from the main Reddit League of Legends. From someone called Sinyi, who's actually a top 1% commenter. And the title of this post was, Ludwig and the BBC are wrong about jungle being the easiest role. There's always a hot topic in the community about, what's the easiest role? And people love to talk about the easiest role. We spoke on the podcast. Ludwig literally thought himself that he played the easiest role. You're pretty passionate about jungle being the easiest role.
I don't know, actually. Let's get into it.
We'll break it down.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
I think there's some components here.
Yeah.
I think it's more in depth than just...
Yes.
Let's just do a blanket statement. As we know a lot on this podcast, let's get into the details. So, the post reads... Watch a bit of the BBC podcast that had Ludwig as a guest on, and there's a segment where he and the others talk about how jungle is the easiest role. Also, this is zero hate to the guy, but I do find it interesting to see his perspective as a new player. Now, after learning about how Ludwig has been playing, it kind of makes sense from his perspective, and some of the things he talks about as not having to worry about matchups makes sense to a certain extent. Yes, in jungle, you aren't immediately boned from the get-go if you get counter-picked, but I think he fails to realize that this is due to multiple factors. Number one, he's getting coached by very good players. Straight up, this makes a massive difference compared to the learning curve that most junglers face when learning the role. Unironically, it can take years for someone to get down an aspect of jungle, whereas a couple of coaching sessions can shorten that into days. Number two, he's playing Amumu. Amumu is one of, if not the easiest junglers to play in the game. He's a tank with great clear, amazing engage, crazy back-to-back CC chaining, great damage, and a fight-winning ult. The only problem is he falls off in high elos and tends to fall off late game. Number three, and I cannot stress this enough, Ludwig has been playing ranked for 10 weeks and admits to not knowing what most champs do because he doesn't need to. This is a combination of what I assume to be great macro from his coaching and the simple effectiveness of Amumu. For background, I've played every role for at least a couple of months straight to get a sense of how they work in the pursuit of being more aware of the game and to be able to understand when not something is my fault or my teammate's fault. Top lane went 0-3 before. I've been full cleared. Their fault. I know from experience how easy it is to give up the first couple of waves and not die. Enemy bot's been pushed up with no sums, but I'm trying to gank Ahri mid. My fault. I'm not catching a damn Ahri with ult up. I should know better. I also know that as a support, you should be getting vision on Dragon. As an ADC, getting a potential double kill is worth more than 3 caster minions. It's all given me a lot of context and unironically has led me to seeing the forest for the trees when it comes to general game knowledge. Anyway, while I understand some of Ludwig's points and some of them do have merit, I find it hard to take the word of someone who has been playing for around 10 weeks that a role is much easier than others simply because you don't have to constantly be fighting and interacting with enemy players. That's a common misconception that lots of people who haven't played jungle for a while, because if you're playing jungle, quite literally half of your time is spent interacting with all of the enemy team, not just one laner. It's the role that requires constant decision making with no clear path to victory set up for us. All the lanes have a game plan set up for them from spawn. Get to lane, CS, kill your enemy laner, take tower, rinse and repeat every game. The only constant between junglers is your first full clear, and then you have to choose which side you're path into. What objective do you want to try to get first? How is each lane doing? Can you counter jungle? Jungle tracking, camp, respawn timers, counter ganks. Lanes are difficult in their own right, but not nearly as mentally taxing as jungle is. TLDR, jungle may not be the hardest role, but it is by no means the easiest. That honor goes to mid. Also, Ludwig said, BBC proudly with your chest. The top comment is, I think 80% of players can get to gold plat if they just learn Nocturne and Amumu and just play 200 plus games.
It's a lot here.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot
so
going on.
where's your first thoughts here? What should we
Okay,
do?
so we need to define...
Do we need to define what easy
role.
means?
Okay, easy to do what? Okay, so in the case of Ludwig, he was trying to get to platinum in the shortest time period possible, right? So he had a challenge. He had to get, by the end of the season, he had to get platinum. Okay, so in the context of his journey, what we were talking about what was the easiest role, the way I was interpreting, I think, and let's just make it clear for right now. Let's talk about it right now. What would be the easiest role? What would have been the easiest role for Ludwig to get to platinum in a short period of time, given his situation?
And based on a couple of factors, he doesn't really know what money champions do, so he needs to not be reliant on mechanical champion.
He's going to get coaching. That's baked in.
So it's going to be really more cerebral thinking about the game, more macro decisions.
He doesn't have months and months and months to grind out to figure out what all the champions do. So he needs to leverage, okay, I'm going to get a lot of help. I'm going to get a lot of people to help me. I'm going to get a lot of coaching. I've only got this amount of time to play. How do I get to platinum? Okay. So again, I think jungle still would be the easiest role to complete that particular challenge. It would be the easiest role to get to platinum in that period of time because there is less variables impacting your learning journey. Jungle is the role that I believe, and you'll probably know this better than anyone, I think jungle is the easiest role to teach. I think because there is the most things that are in your control. And when you're... one of the trickiest things about League of Legends is adapting to chaos. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of variables. The problem with lane, comparatively to jungle, is that you're versing a different matchup nearly every single game. Okay? Like the likelihood... sure, there's very popular matchups, but for the most part, if you play... let's say you play 10 games, you're probably going to verse maybe 10 different champions, or maybe you might see the same matchup like twice, right? For the most part. I don't know the stats there. That's kind of what my intuition tells me. Okay. In jungle, okay, you're basically doing a very, very similar thing, regardless of what jungler you're opposing or what lanes you're playing with.
You can instantly start replicating a game plan. You're
exactly
basically saying.
Right. A game plan is very replicable.
And build the muscle memory quick.
And you can actually isolate concepts within the jungle role incredibly well. It's like, okay, I need to get back onto my Raptors as they spawn, and you can basically do that every single game. I can track where the enemy jungle starts and try to have an idea about where they're starting every single game. There's a whole list of things that you can control. That's 100% on you, not influenced by anyone
I can
else.
decide whether to gank or not, and a gank can really influence the game. You can ruin lanes from a bad gank. So if you start knowing what a good and a bad gank looks like wait for people to heavy trade a little bit more. Don't gank full HP laners with the wave shoved in. These are quick concepts you can quickly start applying and have really big results in your games.
Exactly. You can get massive results for developing these habits. Now, I'm not here saying that learning these things is easy. It's easier relative to the concepts that you would have to learn through a lane. That's what my contention is. It's like, okay, let's compare the concepts here for a second. Let's just take mid versus jungle, right? We're a mid laner and a jungle here, right? Some of the concepts as a mid laner that you would need to learn to get to platinum, you would need to learn how to time trades with last hits. That's a very big one. You would need to learn how to desync minions so you can actually make sure you're getting all the minions. You would need to find that balance between trading and CSing. You would actually have to learn a pretty decent amount of matchups and develop matchup understanding. You would need to develop really good quality lull state usage to be aware of where your jungler is on the map and complement your jungler. You would have to tighten up your wave management. You would have to get very confident with your resets and figure out how to get a reset without losing. You would have to familiarize yourself with TP, how to use TP, both non-empowered and empowered. You would actually have to develop a decent amount of mechanical ability to space and tether.
All while maintaining the mental stack of the enemy, putting pressure on you at every moment of the game. Versus jungle, you have so much time of not exactly okay, get into the highest level of jungle. I see with Emerald players, they actually are not able to understand what's going on in 3 lanes at once. That's what challenger junglers do. They know what's going on in every single lane at every moment of the game.
And let's make a key distinction here. We're talking about getting to platinum for the sake of this argument, right? Learning the game the fastest way possible to get to platinum, right? My contention here, based off all of that, based off what you said there, the mental stack required to learn each of those skills is a lot more intensive for mid lane than it is jungle. And I don't think it's actually even close, to be honest. Yeah. I don't actually think it's even close. Yeah. And if Ludwig were to play mid lane, even the simplest mid laner for that period of time, there is no way that he would have got platinum. No way.
In 10 weeks.
In 10 weeks. No way.
Given his gaming background as well, that's really important. We
Yes.
talked about his gaming background a lot. People will be like, "Oh, like I did that." It's like, well, remember
Yes,
Ludwig didn't
given-
play PC games.
Exactly.
We saw his mechanics he did improve his mechanics, but his mechanics was really poor, and he was able to get away with it a lot with a champ like.
And he barely scraped the barrel, right?
Yeah.
He barely scraped it. That's even with jungle, right? With the simplest jungler. Just put that in perspective. With the simplest jungler, with all the coaches in the world, Perry and Nathan and this, he still barely scraped it. Just put that in perspective, right? Okay. Now, again, with all that being said, I'm not saying no role is easy. League is a hard game regardless of the role you pick, right? It's all relative. So,
I mean, if it was that easy, right? If you actually would look at the ladder theoretically, then wouldn't junglers just fill the entire ladder? But that's I guess now we talk a little bit about the jungle sort of scales like a lot. Like you have to have really good game understanding to play jungle at a high level. You can't just full clear and like you can play full clear, but you need to understand why you're full clear and why you're not taking ganks and still punishing the enemy jungler, right? So when I think about jungle, when I hear this argument, I think jungle and also playing support enchanter supports. Because the mechanical aspect of the game with that is severely reduced, those theoretically would be the sort of the lowest skill floor to like get up to a rank like platinum. But that's not to say like there's a massive skill cap. I think still.
I think enchanters have one of the highest skill caps in the entire game.
In high elo.
In high elo, incredibly difficult.
Super hard, right?
Very, very, very hard.
Just like a lot of other champs, like Amumu, you don't really see in that high elo because he sort of does drop off a bit, right? Like he's pretty one dimensional. It's a bit easier to play against his Q and all that sort of stuff. So jungle, yeah, I think it gets to you to a point, but people get completely capped at jungle. Jungle no longer becomes. I think that actually sort of maybe switches a little bit. You could even say about the easiest for like top lane and maybe mid lane even in aspects.
After that, you mean?
After you get to the
yeah.
Emerald Plus stage, because people just completely can't grasp jungle at like Emerald and Diamond.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there's something there with junglers. Like you can do a lot to get you to a point. But then jungle becomes a role where you need to understand a lot about the game.
Because you're not going to be the strongest person in the game anymore. Like you're the mid laners and the top laners are the strongest people in the game past Emerald, right?
It's when both junglers get it. When both junglers
Yes.
Yes, when both junglers.
Respawns, objectives.
Yeah, so what Charlie's saying, because you don't have a microphone, so I think it's important. Yeah, so Charlie's not talking here. So Charlie's talking without a microphone.
I think I come on faintly, honestly.
Yeah, but basically saying, because when the junglers both get strong, and you can't just be the person that's running around the map farming.
And be like
a
100 CS against your opponent.
and beating everyone else, then the game becomes tricky because you got to start thinking about win conditions. Who do I play around? Getting creative with your kit and like really leveraging the utility. Or you're playing a carry-oriented jungler, and that completely adds a lot of complexity into your journey, right, as a jungler.
Well, then you're pressured to play fights mechanically really well because your teammates are all going to be behind. You're playing the full clear farming style. Then now it's the mechanical aspect that, again, Ludwig didn't need.
You
didn't need. So yeah, it sort of based the complexity on the rank, and it's really funny how the game sort of works that way.
It almost makes me think that if you got to like platinum as a mid laner, right, and you never played jungle, you would have an easier time going from plat to emerald than you would probably a jungler
in a way, yeah,
going from platinum to emerald. You know what I mean? Like if you got to, because that's such a big effort, such a gigantuous effort to get to
and
platinum as a mid laner.
There's a lot of mechanics that have gone into that. You're like, mechanically you have to be at a certain point, but junglers can have horrible mechanics. They have all the cerebral stuff. Yeah. But it's, in a way, it's easier. I've always thought it's easier to teach someone the knowledge than the mechanics, right? To using your mouse. So let's say the easiest clients for you to work with, I assume, is the really mechanically talented players that just need some discipline, some macro, and then bam, they're going to start rocketing up through Emerald to Diamond, right?
Yeah, the easiest clients are always the ones that already have the kind of mechanical ability.
And if I see a really good mechanical jungler, I actually don't see that. Like mechanics with jungle is typically going to be tied with your game knowledge in a way anyway. Like I don't really see like some fringe cases, but there'll be way more for you.
Well, I think let's get into that discussion very quickly. At a very high level, you can really boil down mechanics into two categories. Junglers have what I would call anticipation-based mechanics, where like it's not actual raw mechanical ability,
like reaction speed type thing.
It's not nothing to do with reaction speed or like their clicking ability or anything like that. It's purely just like you can play fights well mechanically because you're anticipating what's coming and what's going, right? Junglers, you will develop that aspect of the mechanical part of the game, but you really struggle to develop the raw mechanical, like I'm talking the clicking aspect of things and min-maxing your movement and all those other things.
Yeah, like
as a
spacing and
jungler.
tering, like, doesn't exist for junglers.
You
Like,
don't need to.
They don't need, never need
They're
to.
very
yeah.
rare.
Yeah.
And even if you were to play it, like think about it as well, like if you were to play jungle, let's say you tried to climb with Kindred jungle, how difficult it would, how long it would
Nidalee,
take.
yeah,
it would take so long to learn. Like you'd be better off being
Playing
a
a laner, then playing Nidalee and Kindred. Yeah.
Exactly right. And one thing that really proves the point as well is that there are many laners that play jungle and can play jungle to a high level, but it's very rare that a jungler can play a lane to a high level. It doesn't exist.
Or close to sort of their rank
Yeah,
around.
it doesn't really exist. I don't really.
There's
think
massive drop-offs.
You very rarely see that. You could see like 1,000. You could even see like 1,000 LP difference between like a jungle going to a laner.
That's what it was for me, dude.
You can have that. Whereas the other way around wouldn't exist. You can have someone. It's like let's say a 500 LP master tier mid laner. They could like play jungle probably to like a low master level, like probably on a carry jungler or something like that, just because mechanically they know what to do. And if they got coaching and they understood the jungle concepts, they could probably get very quickly up there in the ranks.
Yeah.
So yeah, with all that being said, it's not as simple as this is the easiest role. It depends on what we're talking about and easier to do what. Easier to get to platinum, easier to go from diamond to challenger, easier to do what? And this is what the problem with a lot of these posts is that this guy has a point. Jungle's not an easy role, and you can tell throughout the post he was kind of talking about, it seems like he was leaning more towards the higher elo brackets. Like I think that's kind of what he was alluding to, right? So yeah, he has a point. I don't think jungle is easy to learn in the higher elo brackets. It's very, very intensive.
AD carry is the hardest role in the game at all ranks.
So Charlie, again without his microphone, saying AD carry is the hardest role.
Many AD carries would agree.
Yeah, no. And you have no mic, so there's no rebuttal here, Charles.
All right. Our next post. I'm out of iron. Thoughts on the advice Reddit gave me. Very interesting.
So I want to preface this Reddit post.
Yeah, you selected this guy.
So I selected this. Now, what I found interesting about this is the worldview of an iron player and them trying to make sense of like the results that they got. Okay. And so I think that like, we'll read through this, but I also want this to be kind of like a miniature case study on this individual who wrote this post and kind of like the narratives or like the beliefs and like the worldview of this individual. That's kind of what I want to focus on here. Not necessarily the content, but how did he, like the person constructing this post, okay?
And this is what we at Broken by Concept, BBC podcast, we love psychoanalyzing people that we don't know.
Yes.
It's a fun exercise
so
for us.
toxic.
It's fun. We enjoy it here. And I think our listeners enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
Given our experience, working with a lot of players, we can profile players pretty well, we think. Anyway, I was hard stuck. 500 games last split with 333 games on Vex. I made a couple of posts with my stats and videos asking for advice. So the people who actually helped. Firstly, I'm grateful to the people who genuinely helped me. I had some very nice people spend their time to help me improve. I had a lot of people take a look at my game videos and give me a list with timestamps on things I did good or bad. In particular, they told me what to do instead, and most importantly, why. This was in bolded. Like, he wanted to know why he was doing things poorly. There were also people who went out of their way and actually talked to me. One guy made a private YouTube video and added his voice commentary on an entire game, adding his thoughts. A handful of people added me and reviewed a recent game with me. One guy added me and sometimes spectated a game without telling me, and then we had a little discussion after the game, allowing me to have a lesson from that game. Second thing, people with copy-paste advice. You need to CS more, you need to take bad trades, you're out of position. Sure, but I can figure this much out myself. Just upvote a guy that already gave this advice. If you have nothing else to add, don't make a separate post. I don't need 50 separate posts of people telling me stuff like this. When I watch back the game, I can figure out on my own that 5.5 CS is low. I can see that I died because I walked somewhere we didn't have vision while I didn't have teammates nearby. I can see a trade is bad. The Flamers, at least 75% plus of people just flamed me for no reason. People felt the need to constantly remind me that iron is the worst possible rank and that people with actual disabilities are in that rank. How is this helpful? Do you think that I forgot what rank I'm in? That I need a reminder? A bunch of people were under the impression that iron accounts are rare and they sell for good money. They felt the need to let me know you actually need a lot of skill to end up in iron. Intentionally, that is, to sell the account. Maybe this was a thing at some point, but last split 16% of players were in iron. Next point, don't question me, people. Don't question me, people. I'm platinum/master rank. You should forget whatever you think you know and just listen to what I say. Don't question me. Frankly, you're in iron. I felt like I needed to remind you how bad that actually is. No, I in fact have forgotten that I'm iron. I trust that you're better than me. That doesn't mean I'll just forget whatever I know. My game knowledge isn't just stuff I made up. All of the stuff I do is based on things I've heard on the BBC podcast, Skillcapped, or other YouTube tutorials. Be specific and tell me something I do, what to do instead, and why it's better, instead of telling me to forget everything. The mindset of don't question me, you're iron, is so dumb. A lot of the time, I'm just asking for clarification. One guy told me my starting position was wrong. I explained why I think that's the spot I'm supposed to be and asked them what spot they thought would be better, and again, why. I give them all that info, not to undermine them. I want them to answer which spot instead, why, and maybe they can explain where my thought process is wrong. That guy never told me what the alternative spot I should start, so I still just start in the same spot. Okay, so I think what he's trying to say here is that people like don't question, don't tell them, I'm not going to tell you why, just do this because I'm higher ranked than you. Don't think about it. What actually worked? It was the champion. I know a lot of people throw around the idea that you can OTP any champ to master. I'm certain someone who can actually reach master with that champ will still be able to get out of iron with that champ. That doesn't mean everyone can. This idea that Vex has a lot of agency is complete BS in iron. Vex has one speciality, taking out squishy champs. I don't think we need to read all this Vex specific thing.
Yeah. He basically just goes to say that he didn't think Vex was good in iron. He has no agency.
Okay. I switched to Vega. Whatever role my team wasn't doing, I'll take care of it. The champ is just so much more versatile. And then he goes on to explain about his thoughts on Vega.
He basically champs up to Vigar. And then played a bunch of Vigar. Yeah.
My advice to anyone stuck in iron. Pick a champ that gives you agency. Don't pick a champ that does one thing really well, because all those other things you rely on your iron teammates to do. If you ask Reddit for advice, expect only 5 to 10% to be useful to you. Look for that one guy that lists advice but also explains it. Don't blindly listen to stuff. You need to gain better understanding. Only people who explain to you how to evaluate the situation. People who tell you what your opinions are. People who explain to you why taking action A or B is good here will be educational for you. You're trying to gain a better understanding, not to be ordered around like a dog just because the other guy is higher ranked than you.
Okay, so there's a lot here I really want to dissect here. So, first things first, okay? Yeah, this person played, what, how many games in iron they said? They said 500.
500 games. With
333 games of Vex. Okay?
And I assume 177 on
Vigar. Yeah, right? So, you know, basically what happened, right? They played a shit ton of Vex, and they didn't chample cycle, right? They didn't do any of that. They were probably in the absolute shit with narratives and weird beliefs about the champion. And then what happened?
I'll list a few here. Vex sucks at damage in towers. Vex sucks at damage in objectives. She has a strong burst, but then long cooldowns and weak autos. Vex can't win against half the enemy team. If you split push or get caught alone somewhere by the wrong champ, you die. You just die. Fighters, tanks, they just all beat you.
That's true. You do fighters, tanks do beat you. So look, at the end of the day, I actually agree that Vigar is a much easier to execute champion to climb from iron to bronze. 100%. They're right. But the in their mind, though, it's actually very difficult for them to even compare Vex and Vigar because they're probably so in the shit with Vex. And them just simply playing a different champion and having a refresh perspective
is going to be beneficial.
It's already going to be beneficial. And if it was the other way around where they played 300 games of Vigar that went to Vex, they probably would have been writing about how good Vex is. I'm not, maybe not, I don't know. But my point is that it's very difficult for this person to be objective about the actual relative strength of these champions based off their experiences. They don't have enough perspective. Because again, you've played 333 games of Vex in a row. You don't have, you know what I mean?
The weaknesses are on top of your mind.
Exactly
Like if
right.
you don't have success of a champion, right? Someone could type out an essay of everything that's wrong with the champion, and they actually would struggle to write what's good with the champion. By the way, if you're in your honeymoon phase, right, with a champion, like I'm playing, I'm making a Graves guide for the Jungle Academy right now, and like my top of my list is like I do so much damage. I 3-shot
mobility.
camps. I can I can be 100 CS on my opponent. Like I'm in the I'm happy to write those things. But then I'm starting to get into the shit a little bit with Graves now, getting certain comps like range comps, and when I have no CC, like I could if I get 300 games in and I have 0 progress, then suddenly that list will be way bigger than
and
the
you can
the
create
pros.
any narrative you want.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And this person has got this negative frame of mind. Obviously, I'm not saying they shouldn't, right? They've been in Iron for 333 games. The reality is that you can create this super sophisticated narrative about how terrible Vex is and how there was nothing I could have done. The champ was just terrible and blah, 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 blah. And you could be right. Right? All of those things that you could say are objectively true.
Every champ has weaknesses.
Every champ has weaknesses. Exactly right. You could write an essay about all of the weaknesses of Vex, and someone reading it could be, holy shit, is this champ
This is the worst champ in the game, yeah.
And then like you'll see someone else play it and pop off and be like, hey, this champ's broken.
Broken, yeah.
What the hell? The engage rate is crazy. It has this best self peel in the game. It has
can't get
AoE
ganked,
CC,
yeah.
one shots 80 carries, one shots mid laners. Oh my god. And so you could make any argument to make it sound like the most overpowered champion in the game, right? So, okay, so I think that's the first thing that I think is important just to get out, air that out, right? I think there's a lot here in terms of like, if you had to play, right, 333 games of Vex and it took you 500 games to get out of Iron, the reality is that you're probably not very curious. Okay, and you're not really understanding, and I think actually people giving you advice, just do this, you don't even have to understand why, is kind of warranted. So like sometimes I'll say that to clients, you don't actually even need to understand. And like, or maybe sometimes he's too curious. I want to back up there for a second.
I think
he could be too curious.
So he kept bolding and highlighting. He wants to know why things are doing.
You don't need to know why.
Yeah, that actually is helpful in certain things because there's so much going on in League.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn. We're just going to tell you the important things. Sorry, not even the important things. We'll explain the important things why, but the not so important things like where you should go out of base and that sort of stuff. It's actually a waste of time.
It's actually a waste of time.
To explain why. You're overloading things.
And I reckon what he's done is he's got all these people reviewing his games. He's got all these different opinions.
There'll be so much stuff.
He's listened to all this content,
Yeah.
skill caps. He's listened to our podcast. He's got so much going on. He just needs to literally just like follow some basic principles. And it's like, okay, I got to get onto the back
and get
line.
really good at those principles.
And it's like I reckon, what's happened as well is people have been looking at his gameplay and saying, you need to be positioning on the side and trying to get onto the best. And he's like, he wants like a really sophisticated understanding of why. Why do you got to do that? Why can't you stand here? And it's like, and then people are probably getting so frustrated.
It would be frustrating, yeah.
That would be very frustrating to coach because you just don't need to really know why. Just do this, play around with it, feel it out, and then later on down the line we can actually understand it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I now this is actually a bit of an archetype of client that I think that there is people that are really unsatisfied with the coaching session review that I did because I didn't explain why on certain things, and I was basically telling them, literally, don't worry about this. This is where I need to put your energy and focus because that's where I know it's not even the fact that it's like I'm not giving the person what they want. Like it's sort of like I know what's best for them,
yes,
but they're not accepting that in a way.
So you got to remember, right? The job of a coach, what we do, the art of coaching, right, and what we've learned over our many years of coaching is that when we look at a VOD, we could sit there and spend hours dissecting every decision. But what we're doing is we're being selective. We're skipping over certain things. We're picking certain things to talk about. We're completely ignoring certain elements. We say, oh, that's good enough. And we're actually analyzing real time what is valuable for this person to really understand, what's not valuable for them to understand. Sometimes you'll give them a super in-depth understanding of one thing, and then you'll completely skim over another thing. And so it's almost as if the client has to trust that we have their best interests in heart and have to trust that this methodology, this way of learning is going to benefit them in the long run. That's kind of like, and in a way, the vibe I get is that he probably didn't trust the advice.
He doesn't trust the community.
He doesn't trust the community.
Yeah.
And maybe that's fair. Maybe he was getting dog shit advice. I don't know, right? And that's the reality. If you're not willing to pay for coaching and you don't know who you're getting advice from, that probably could be potentially warranted, right? So again, I'm not saying maybe he had to be curious because maybe he had to check if these people even know what they're talking about. I'm not 100% sure. My point is that there's always so much more to the story here. And when I see someone being stuck in iron for that long, my gut instinct is that these other people are not the problems. The champions are not the problems. You are the problem. And I feel as though this Reddit post is kind of like, it's failing to take accountability. It's failing to take responsibility. And it's
yes,
you know what
I read, it's like, it's the community's fault.
For failing me.
For failing me,
Rather than, you know what, I actually maybe wasn't the best student. Okay, I got all this bias. Thank you, everyone. Upon reflection, I was actually stubborn. I probably, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the mindset
I understand why you chose this.
That's why I chose this. It's like, it's almost as if they're trying to justify to everyone else that it's all your fault. Told you.
Why it took me so long to get
Why did you guys
iron?
not tell me to play Vigard? That was the problem after all. You guys are all useless. That's the vibe I get when I'm listening to this. And this just sounds to me, and I apologize if you are a BBC fan, you do just seem like a problem client. And you do probably just need to do a lot of introspection. And there's a reason you were in iron for that long. And yes, you did it on hard mode by trying to OTP Vex. To be fair, that's true. That's objectively true. But like, there's lessons there that you need to take personally. And I feel like this is not taking accountability for that.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. And again, I am thinking, use the word problem client. This type of thinking really reliant on the coach. It's actually really not beneficial.
It's almost as if we get these clients sometimes where they come in and it's like, I've got all these problems, you fix it.
Yeah, that's right. It's your shit.
It's your problem.
Here's the shit on you.
It's like, I'm broken, you fix me. Tell me, everything that I need to do. And it's if like they're going to perfectly execute it. And then you say, but then they'll come up with a reason why they can't do it. Or like they need something more. It's never ending. And I think that's probably also what's happening with the advice they're getting. Maybe the person comes in wanting to help and they end up just saying, just shut up and listen to what I say and do this. And then that person's taking that offensively. But it's like, you know what I mean? It's like almost they're looking for an excuse to not get results in a way. And yeah, I mean, it's like an ego problem in a way. So, I could be wrong, which we are really reaching here. So that's just the vibe I get from a lot of these posts like this. There's a certain archetype of player like you're referring to.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Like I'm trying to think a little bit about the percentages. It's like, what's like an ideal client like doing? Like how much percent should you be like, again, I don't even use the relying, like a coach is a tool to sort of develop your understanding, but you've got to do like, I don't know what the percentage would be for league. Is it 70% of the work themselves, 80% of the work? And then, like even though you're spending maybe a little bit of time with the coach can be sort of saying really big 20%ers, but you know what I mean? Like I guess like how much, it's like the effort. It's like how much effort do they need to be doing on their own? Like I feel like that's these people like this. It's like 10% of their like effort that they're putting in. The coaches are 90%.
Yeah, I don't know.
What I'm saying there?
I don't know. Maybe, I'm actually not sure. But there's another thing I forgot to mention before, Nathan, about, the comment, one of the comments in the post was like, you're getting caught out. You're moving into fog of war when your team is not on the map, right? That was one of the points of the post, right? And he was saying, do you think I don't know that? You think I haven't been able to spot that myself? That's kind of what he said. That's exactly what he said. It was like, you think I don't already know that? You don't think that's obvious to me? You don't think I've already been able to identify that?
Would I take a bad trade or whatever or die?
No, you're not. Because if you weren't running in and dying in fog of war around your team, you wouldn't be an iron. If you weren't taking these really obviously bad trades, you wouldn't be an iron. And I feel like with some of these clients that they're looking for something that doesn't exist. They're looking, they think that those mistakes aren't the reason they're in iron. Those obvious mistakes can't be the reason they're in iron, but it is the reason you're in iron. The things that are in your face that look that obvious, you getting caught out. That death is everything, especially on a champion like Vex, because if you die, right, getting caught while your team is deploying on the map, and then you're not able to get to the objective early enough and sit around the edges, you're going to be out of position. Or, specifically with Vex, you're a champ that relies heavily on damage. If you get behind in damage, you can't one-shot people, you can't actually have threat, you're going to be fucking useless.
Do you know what he's saying? He's saying he wants to know how to take bad trades, have poor CS, and get caught out, and still win.
To win.
Exactly right. And Vigard can kind of do that. Vigard can kind of do that. Because you can just stall out the game and then get to a few items and pop off. So you're not really climbing in that sense. You're not really learning what you need to learn. You're just finding an excuse. You're finding a way out. And that's a tough pill to swallow, So I thought that was fascinating. By the way, do you have any sunscreen here, Charles?
You're frying.
I'm getting fried here, honestly. Bloody hell.
All right, our next post, again, you selected this, Curtis, was playing jungle is so emotionally taxing. I'm not that low elo around high plat, and honestly, it's tough. Every game is your fault. If your laners lose, it's your fault. If you don't grab objectives, even if the laners didn't rotate to help you secure them, it's your fault. I don't know. I'm just frustrated at the state of the game right now as a jungler. It feels so frustrating to play my favorite role.
So I selected this one for you, Nathan.
Okay.
When you see this, what comes to mind?
Slash mute all. It's funny this sort of ties it a little bit into the Ludwig post about jungle being, the easiest role. The jungle is the most high. It's like the spotlight's on you, certainly in a game as jungle, because the jungle diff can be very large and impactful compared to maybe some other roles, unless literally people are just, losing, they come back to lane to get solo killed like 0-4, 0-5, which, honestly probably doesn't happen as much as, poor jungle, because junglers can ruin games. Because junglers have the ability to gank a lane. Like they're literally making their play and get triple killed for their team. That exists. That you can't really do that as a laner. It's very hard to do that, right? So junglers are highlighted a lot. And I'll be honest, I actually say this a lot in my coaching sessions. I say, this play that you're doing here, like I don't blame people for saying junglers are just like, terrible players. They're ruining the game, because we are. We genuinely are. And once you actually accept that fact and be a little bit more curious and critical and look at the plays that you're making, the objectives that you're starting, especially starting objectives, and you're pinging your laners and you're letting them ruin their tempo. I mean, tempo for laners, especially bot lane ADCs. I know, Charles, you're a big one around, maybe too much of the extreme on tempo, but after laners get like a double kill, they push a wave in, they're 10% HP. They don't want to hit the dragon. They want to keep their extending the league, right? So I think the nature of jungle, I think it's always going to be that way. I think that's the exciting part of the role, because there's pros and cons to every role. Like that's the pro, that's the cons of the role. Again, you're the spotlight and the emotionally taxing, but then you have all these other pros.
You have the control.
Right? Exactly,
right.
You
have
the agency. So it's just pros and cons to everything, right? Like, nothing's black and white,
And it's like, if you're not looking for a role that is, I guess,
where the heat's on
then that's fine. There are other roles that are less like that, and you can focus on yourself. Like top is probably a little bit more, in the 1v1, I guess.
And you can play certain champs in top where you just minimize and and you actually can't ruin the game. It's very hard to ruin the game, because you can just stall and play tanks or like Ornn or whatever it is and be a beast. So when I see posts like this as a jungler, I just like look at this and it's like poor me. Like let's wake up a little bit here. Like let's.
It's like they want. It's like what's that quote? It's like they want a cake.
They want their cake.
Okay,
They want to have their cake and eat it too.
or something like that.
It means that you want to. They can't hear you. You want to have the cake.
Yeah.
And also still be able to eat it. But still have it.
Oh, okay. So you still want to have all the cake, but you still want to eat it. Okay, I see. Yeah. So it's like that. It's like they want to have this role that they can do all these things
and not get blamed for it. Have insane map impact, like camp a lane, like dive a couple of times.
La La Land. It's like people, they say about the rank system. They want this like rank system where they can win all their games and get a bunch of LP and never have the trolls and play shit and get away with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With great power becomes great responsibility.
Yes, with great power comes with great responsibility.
But I love the top comment here, Nathan.
It's a crybaby post.
So this top comment says, "You'll never be good enough for your solo queue teammates."
This is upvoted, 360 upvotes.
Just that quote alone, right? It says it's the best player in the world will regularly get flamed and entered because someone who doesn't play the role thinks that you did something wrong. And so I think Whippo spoke about this ages ago. Like everyone should kind of play every role to get a respect for the difficulty of the role. And I think the longer you play League, at least for us, and at least for me, it's like I've learned to become so much more empathic about like if my jungler spam ping me for that neutral objective, I understand why he wants me to move, and I understand that he doesn't know my situation. Like, next level empathy in League is actually really overpowered. It's like, I understand why you're angry. And I'm not taking it personally. That's just the game.
Yeah, that's the game.
And you just didn't understand my situation, and that's okay. Yeah. That's your level of play, and I can understand why you'd be angry. And if I had your level of understanding of the game, I would be angry too. So like, in order to transcend mentally in League, it really it's like you need to be able to empathize and understand, okay, why would I be frustrated? Why is this person frustrated? It's not nothing personal.
No.
They don't know who you are. They don't give a fuck who you are. I don't give a fuck who they are.
They're just a competitive person.
It's just a competitive individual,
Yeah.
and we all get emotional, and we all get angry, and the game can be incredibly frustrating, but that's what makes it fun. And so that's why I tell people, never apologize for your mistakes, okay? Never apologize for your decisions. Own your decisions. You're going to lose games for your team. I remember like at the start of season 15, I made like in 2 games back-to-back game-losing Baron calls, and I got like flamed. And I didn't have chat muted for some reason. And I got flamed. And then people were saying like, they were saying shit like, these Baron calls, what the fuck is this, Curtis? And stuff like that. And like BBC macro or some shit. Right? And I'm like,
It's a disgrace.
And I said, no. And I was in live commenting in my Discord. I said, but I made the decision.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the learning. I learned a lot from those Baron calls. I lost those games. I slowly lost those games. I'm owning it. And they don't mean anything personally.
No.
And even if they did, I don't give a flying fuck. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. And so it's a win-win scenario. And if anything, it's like, you got to be selfish in your learning journey. You got to be a bit of an asshole. You got to be like, you know what? I'm willing to lose this game right now for this learning, because I know I'm going to win more games in the long run.
Yes.
That's it. You got to have that attitude. And you act, and that it follows onto real life. You can't go around people pleasing everyone, because there's always going to be someone that has an issue with you. There's people who watch this podcast and love the message and get a lot of value from it. And there's people that hate this podcast, think that we're frauds, and think that our message is the most toxic thing in the world. How can both coexist? Welcome to life. It's the same thing in League of Legends. And so that's like, I think League gives us this medium to kind of practice empathy and understanding and viewing the world through other people's lenses. That's what I love. That's what I love doing in League. It's like, I understand why this guy's pissed.
Yeah.
I understand it.
You know what would be really cool content is like looking at the conversation of like the chat of a game, and then looking at the perspective of why that person's pissed off at them, and then the inverse, and then look at all those person's game ruining mistakes, and like, okay, well, he could have easily flamed me for this, but he didn't. Like, that'll be so interesting to like break down, in a way, psychoanalyze people in games around why they're thinking that way and why their view of the game might be wrong, why they might be right in some cases, you know?
I always like to say, sometimes they have a point. Like,
Yeah, sometimes they have a point. They're right. Sometimes they're right. Yep, you're right, man. I really should have moved here.
Yeah.
That's it. What do you want me to say, man? You're right. You're bang on. And we still lost the game, and we're still going next. You know, like, that's it. But I also feel as though there's a lot of people just that aren't ready. They're not at the maturity level to actually be introspective and see how they contributed to the situation. Like, they can have all the facts laid out in front of their face. Like, you could add them after the game, you could get into the VOD, and they will come into the VOD looking for any reason to not take accountability. So some people just aren't ready for that. There are many, many players in solo queue that are like that. Even at a very high level, they fail to take accountability because it's hard. It is hard. It's easier said than done.
All right, let's move on to a Skool post now. We like our Skool community. We actually just hit 4K members, by the way. So awesome to see that growing. Lots of people, lots of activity. It's free to join. There's a link in the description. This one was an interesting post. It's not really a question to us or something to talk about. I mean, we could talk about this a little bit, but more responses from the community. And I thought, was a great question here from Nipun. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm not going to butcher that. It'll be on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Very short one. Have any of you been made fun of for passionately pursuing League? Would love your stories, thoughts. How did you deal with it? So here's some comments from our community here. This one here is from Yannick. Yes, all the time. I know I shouldn't, but I started not telling the whole truth to people who don't understand. I play in an amateur league and it is a lot of fun, but I barely talk about it outside of the league bubble. Every time I'm telling people what I do in my free time, it feels like I'm committing a crime or doing weird stuff. So I went from telling everybody what my hobby is in detail to saying that I like gaming to saying that I did nothing special on the weekend. Even by my friends who also play League, they don't see the process and don't enjoy climbing the ladder. So they make fun of me whenever I get stuck at a specific rank or am on a loss streak. And why I like this post and want to share this with people, because, you know, we're a very small niche community. People that take rank seriously, respect the game. That is a small community, right? Out there, you guys aren't alone. There is people. And that's why I think it's so important, the community that we're making, of people that they actually can't talk about this with, people, unfortunately.
What this podcast is for is to be people that see the beauty in the game. They see the potential, the positives about the game, and they love the game.
It's like a refugee camp in a way.
Yeah, it's like a safe haven. Yeah,
it's exactly a safe haven. Yeah. Here's from Johnny. He said, random people make fun of you all the time for anything you're passionate about, whether that be cooking, sports, league. People are just insecure and crappy, and you can't let that bother you. Do what you find fun and be proud of it. Zil here says it comes to maturity. If people around you are mature, they will not judge you or be happy for you. I don't know how old you are, but we'll get better with time. Saying it as a French mentality may change the country, though. I'm not sure where that one was going. Alana, I think because League is a video game, a lot of people have a hard time grasping why you would invest so much time to get better into it. I think that's definitely at the highest level of the crux, right? Like going all in and being passionate about, I mean, honestly, even like, maybe mixed martial arts or something, that's, a bit fringe, or people really passionate about the gym. I can see people hating on that. So I think, it's not just League, but I think that definitely League has a negative stigma in general society.
Because it's it's looped under video games, and video games is such a broad. There's a lot of stigma, right?
Yeah, I like when people say video games, and I think about what I do with League, they're two separate things. Yeah. I generally don't think they're the same thing. Like it's like GTA 6 and stuff is all coming out about that. It's not the same category. It's not. Game in 10 years. Yeah, I haven't played a single player game or in forever.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, but people from the outside would view the new, Call of Duty coming out on PlayStation and then League of Legends. Like, you're doing the same thing, whether you're, chilling out after work with a beer, playing COD Zombies, or you're queuing up for a high-intensity rank game. They view them as literally the same thing.
That's not their fault.
And that's not their fault. Yeah. That's just, and again, tied back to the empathy thing. That's like, I understand why people have no idea. And we say this, we understand why people disrespect it.
Yeah.
It's like, cool. If I didn't know what I knew, what we knew, yeah,
of course.
I'd probably be quite similar. You know?
It's like, what is that? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you so serious?
Why are you spending all that time doing that?
And then Eleanor goes on to say, I honestly keep it private mostly. I'll talk about League with my gaming friends, but not with the friends I have outside of it. I don't think they would make fun of me, but I definitely feel like they would not really understand either, or probably think I'm a bit too serious or invested. It can be definitely difficult, but I think it's important to focus on what you want to do and what you're passionate about without seeking the approval of others. You actually made a post here, Curtis. You want to read this one?
Yeah, I was just basically saying when I went to Sydney back in 2017, my friends at that time had, very, very, like, what the hell? You're going to Sydney?
To pursue League coaching full-time, which is...
Like, obviously that's an extreme. I'm not just... I mean, I literally moved there full-time, moved cities and everything, right? And yeah, no one really... not even my family understood. That's the people closest to me really understood. So yeah, that was obviously really hard. And I think what I took away from it is, like, you realize, like, who do you really want in your life as well. I think it was a really great... Like, when you're true to yourself, you really find out very quickly who you do want to surround yourself with and who you don't want to surround yourself with. And I found the best... my best friends in my life through League, basically, So I think that... for those people who feel like they're going to get judged and you've got these negative people shitting on you for something you're passionate about, they don't have to necessarily agree with you, but they have to respect your decision and they have to respect you. And if they're not respecting you and they're shitting on you, well, then the conversation needs to come up. Should you really be spending time with those people? Are those people that you want to have in your life? Do you want to have that sort of negativity in your life? Obviously that's quite intense, but I think there's some truth to that.
Last one here from Peter says, constantly told by my family that it's not real, so it's not worth putting in effort. They dismissed my passion as wasted energy. Even so, they never made me give it up. So in a way, I'm still grateful to them. All right.
Awesome post.
Mailbag time. Away we go. Welcome back for Nathan's Mailbag. Jingle, jingle, jingle song. Alrighty then, our first question here comes from Ronald. The title of this email is Lost My Competitive Edge. Ronald here, long-time listener from the BBC's inception, former Direwolves superfan and first-time messenger. Ronald, we've met Ronald. He was at MEO, our grand final, 2018. He came to our members event in the SCG as well, I think. So I do remember you, Ronald. I do remember meeting you and your face. You were definitely a hardcore Direwolves fan back in our Direwolves days, Curtis and I, back in, you were talking about 2017, 2018. That was our glory days in esports. Awesome. I didn't know you listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, so back in Season 7, I just hit plat and had aspirations of going pro, as I'm sure lots of people did back when the OPL was in its heyday. I just thought as well, the MEO was at Rod Laver Arena, which is the Australian Open's going on there right now, so that's a very funny coincidence. So yeah, Season 7, I just hit plat and had aspirations of going pro, as I'm sure lots of people did back when the OPL was in its heyday. I dedicated at least 8 hours a day to hard grinding League, whether that be on an amateur team or solo queue. I was putting in the hard yards to try and make my dream a reality. During this period of time, I had an unhealthy attachment to League. I was avoiding spending time with friends, IRL. I allowed the outcomes of my games to affect my mood for the whole day, and even sometimes the day after, that causing me to lash out at my family, friends, and teammates. The sheer weight of the challenge I set myself got me diagnosed with anxiety and depression, but I felt if that's what it took to make it to the top, I would cop it on the chin. After 4 solid years of grinding in 2021, I hit D1 and managed to get trials to an LCO team. Needless to say, I didn't make it, and I was absolutely crushed. I was at loss at what to do. I dedicated all of my time to this and was of the mindset that after this year, that was it. Nobody wanted to recruit a 24-year-old rookie to the big league, so I gave up the game, moved halfway around the world, and tried to put it all behind me. After 2 years here, I'm in a much better headspace and have a better relationship with video games and the people around me, and as such, I decided 2025 was the year I was going to return to League with the goal of reaching Diamond again. However, this time with a much healthier approach to mindset and growth. The season has started off okay, and I'm currently plat 2, but I seem to have the problem upon self-reflection where, because I no longer have the win at all cost mindset, I find myself taking more of a, oh well, this is just a game, if I lose it's no biggie approach, and it feels like it's costing me games. I no longer feel the burning hunger to beat everyone and anyone in front of me. Basically what I'm asking is, have I lost my competitive edge and I get back to where I was without falling into the pit again? Many thanks, Ronald. Before we answer this question, I want to talk about this is the Nathan Mott classic where it's like, in anxiety, depression, absolute hell, love it, awesome. I think that putting your all into something and failing is a human experience. I think that's awesome. A lot of people don't even try. I would be, again, it's weird to say, but like patting yourself on the back, for that, failing in a way. I think it's awesome. I think you learn so much from massive failures, going into holes like this. This is what I'm all about. I love getting into massive holes and digging yourself back out.
Yeah, I mean, it's very brave to try and fail. I agree and disagree with Nathan. I'm on the fence here. But yeah, there's some merit to that.
There's probably more healthier ways to go about it, but...
No, but I think you have a point, for sure. I mean, if you don't try at anything and you just...
Put your heart and soul into it,
you just piss fight your way through life. I mean, you're not really going to get anywhere. You're not even going to find out who you are. Anyway, so look, I actually see this problem. I'm going to just be really transparent here. I get a lot of people, not a lot, a few people every now and then come to me and say, Curtis, I want to go pro. I want to, compete in the big leagues. I want to make this a career, whatever. And it always just, unless they are already a very high elo player, I just get this giant knot in my stomach. And I just feel like, oh, what do I say? Because the reality in League is that I haven't seen someone who isn't already a grandmaster or at least master plus player set this goal of getting high challenger and make it without just completely crumbling, because the pressure is too high. If you're a platinum player and you're like, you know what, I feel like I really want to go pro, but the reality, if you have this goal, there's so much room to fail. You know what I mean? There's so many ways to fail, and you've got this high expectation. Your expectation is up here. I'm going to go pro, and then when the reality sets in that you're losing games in Platinum 4, that will hit you like a truck.
Yeah, the gap's just too big.
The gap is just so big that it's demoralizing. I haven't met anyone that's been able to overcome the sheer weight of that expectation. And so even though I'm sure it's possible, but I think without like insane mentorship and starting incredibly young,
yeah.
it's basically impossible. Like you have to, like the way I view it, if you want to go pro, you have to kind of be, already found your own way without a ton of help. You can obviously get coaching and stuff, but you have to already be a pretty solid, relatively good Master Plus player. And then it's like, okay, I've done pretty well. I've made it to Master Plus. I'm still, not super young. Maybe I'm 21. Okay, I want to have a crack. That's reasonable because it's like you can see it. It's like it's in you're kind of not there, but like it's within. You can see it in the distance. You can't even see it in the distance in Platinum. But then people are going to say, well, Curtis, what about a traditional sport? There's 12-year-old kids out there that want to be a professional football player or a tennis player. How come they do it? Well, the difference in traditional sports is that the path is very clear. It's laid out in front of you. You get these coaches. They know exactly what skills to develop. It's a way less chaotic environment. So like, in league, it's like different champions. The game is changing. You haven't, there are so many ways to climb in league that the path is not really laid out. And then, also in traditional sport, they have a pathway, right? It's like, okay, you're gonna compete in this competition. You win this competition. You go in this division. You go here and you win that, and you go to here and there. It's like it's laid out.
I'll also say as well, like if that was the same in traditional sports for league, because the physical aspect is so large, those kids would be like rank 1 on the 12-year-old ladder,
yes,
or like high up on the ladder. But league is the ladder is the entire world, anyone of all ages, in one big giant system. So like, you might be let's say the rank 50th kid, right? In 12, he could become rank 1 in like in the 15-year-old, like obviously in terms of the world rankings, he would be like 100,000 or whatever it is. But you see how it's different with age and the physicality of the sport. Like, you can go from, and again, you're still in distance though, even your point, right? If you're at rank 50, like at 12 compared to everyone else in the entire world at 12 years old, you can see rank 1 pretty closely, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I just think with how clean the pathway is, and this is the benefit of traditional sport, the skill development is there. Like they don't, okay, you're going to do this drill. You've got to be able to do, let's say take 10. I'm just thinking of tennis as I'm going through this because we're watching the Australian Open, right? So like, you've got to be able to do this forehand and get it in there, 5 times, let's say 9 times out of 10. You've got to be able to backhand to get it this distance from the back of the court here 9 times out of 10. You've got to be able to run this distance and this fast. You've got to be able to do this amount of exercise. Like, it's all laid out. Traditional sports have been around for so long. They've got to figure it out. There's systems in place. And if you're not good enough, you'll get weeded out so quick. There is no delusion of you, like, am I going to make it? Am I good enough? You'll get weeded out so young. You'll know really, really, really quickly. Yeah. And the players that make it, you can tell very young that they have it, the hunger, the desire, and the potential. They can spot it really, really quickly, right? In esports, that's just not the case. It's brutal. The skill development is messy. The game is changing. There's no guarantee. Just think about it. There's also no less physical aspects. So you can kind of gaslight yourself into thinking that you could play more games. You get certain people that play 15 games a day who get there. Other people play 7 games a day and get there. It's just a fucking disaster.
It is.
It hurts to even think about it. So it's like, sure, you can have that goal, but it's like, that is an immense amount of pressure you're putting on yourself. And I just haven't seen it happen yet. And like you always say, Nathan, we're still in like
the
stone ages of esports. Like one day it'll get to the point where it's like, there is a pathway. It's very streamlined. You know exactly, like it's all laid out. It's just not even remotely close to getting there. So when anyone sends me that message, I say, look, you can go for it. I'll tell you my opinion on how I would do it and how I would tell my younger self. But that's it. I can only say I would do this and I would do that and come out of coaching and do this and this and this. But it's like, still, that's going to be incredibly difficult. And again, the mental aspect of that is just ginormous. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers his question.
Well, no, it's not his question. His question is about losing his competitive edge.
But anyway, I just think it's important to, I guess, get that out, air that out. Because that is a question we get a lot, right?
Yes, we can now link that part of the episode, Curtis. I'm glad that's out there.
Okay, anyway, back to the competitive edge. You have to find, you got to remember that, like, it seems like to me in the past, his competitive drive came from something external. It came from, I want to be this LCO pro OPL player, right? But now you got to find your competitive gear. What motivates you now? And it has to come internally. It has to come from, I want to improve. I want to be great at this game. I want to be very good at this game. I want to develop these skills. I want to be able to do this in the lane phase. It has to, or you have to enjoy that learning journey. That is where the for us, right? Like, I would say we're still very competitive in the solo queue ladder and against ourselves. But I don't think that doesn't come from me being like, I want to be a pro player or I want to do this. It's more like I have this vision, at least for me, I don't know what it's like for you, but I have this vision of what beautiful League of Legends looks like and feels like. And I want to replicate that as often as humanly possible.
And wherever I get, for rank, I get.
Wherever I get. Exactly right. Whether that's 500 LP, 200 LP, 1K LP, wherever I land, I land. I just want to reach my ultimate potential with what I can do in my current situation, given the amount of games I'm able to put in. Like, I'm going to go on the PC, play my heart out, do what I can, get maximum learnings, and then wherever I land, I live it. But I feel content with that. Because I know that I've done what I can on the Rift, and I feel great doing it because it's fun. That's it. That's where it comes from, you know? And you got to find where that comes from for you. And a lot of the time, it's going to be internal. And it's not this external thing, because that's just not sustainable.
No. That's the young whippersnapper type mindset. That again, it gets you. It can get you really far. But he said that he was. I don't know. He must be like our age. I would say. I think he is. So late 20s. Like, your life's different. Your priorities different. Like, the motivation actually has to come somewhere else. And we see a lot of this in traditional sport athletes, like the best in the world. They switch from that whole ego.
It's like Novak Djokovic now. He's 37, winning these matches. And it's like, that doesn't come from him wanting to be, make a shit ton of money or whatever. He's already
got it all.
He ticked all those boxes, right? It's like, he has a passion for tennis. He has a passion for being just a competitor and expressing himself on the court. That is where... he's been vocalized that. There's heaps of videos talking about Djokovic's mindset. That's what it is, right? So you got to find what makes you tick, but usually it's something internal. Otherwise, it's just not sustainable.
And I want to just talk about maybe something else that's infecting him here. Just giving a bit of reality check is the expectations. His peak with all his effort, everything was Diamond 1. That was, 2021, so 4 years ago coming up. He's currently Plat 2. He took a break. It makes sense really where he is. Like, what I actually think might be happening, he might be thinking, I'm a diamond player, whatever. The play base has got better. Your skills have decayed quite a bit. Platinum 2, Emerald for it makes sort of sense. You're around that Plat 2, maybe Emerald 4 area like that. Like, that's what he might be coming from as well.
Wherever you're at, you're at. You
and I wouldn't be like saying like, oh my God, I'm just so bad at the game. I've lost my competitive edge. Like, you might still be pretty competitive. Maybe you're over-emphasizing this. I imagine you would be. And yeah, we just got to keep chipping away at it. And it makes sense sort of around where you are currently. If you're saying you're in gold, that would sort of be a little bit more panicking. But, it makes sense. All right. We'll do one more question here. This is a good one here, actually. This is not so much a question, but a story. This one here comes from Alan. The title of this email is Spreading the Message You Guys Are Teaching. Hi, Nathan, Curtis, and Charlie. Big fan of the podcast for a couple of months now. You guys have heavily inspired me to get back into League, and I've been having a great time with the game since adopting your mentality. I've also received coaching from Charlie already in the ADC Academy and can see the improvements to me my play. Diamond soon. Do you know who this is, by the way?
Alan,
yeah, awesome. Wanted to share a cool story. I was playing solo queue tonight and ended up having this relatively negative Orianna on my team. She got fed early but constantly was flaming our jungler all game. Just before Atakan spawned, she got caught and died as well as our top laner. In response to this, me and the jungler decided to take Dragon Soul or Soul Point and bot lane turret as a trade for the enemy team getting Atakan. The Orianna hated this and flamed us constantly for not contesting the Atakan, insisting that even with her and our top dead, contesting it is a must since Atakan is an auto win. They get the revived version of Atakan, and I'm just saying in chat to my team, no neutrals are up, just don't fight them for 2 minutes and do your best to disengage if they fight you. Luckily, the enemy team didn't use the buff very well and chose not to fight us at all over the duration they had it. That is until there was only 30 seconds left on the buff, and Orianna, Darius, and Morgana's support engage in the enemy jungle trying to get a pick, and I ping them back. They get collapsed on and die, which ended up being a huge swing for the enemy team. After the game, the Oriana is still flaming our jungler in post-game, talking about how given Atakan lost the game, how the trade wasn't even worth it, and we shouldn't have just fought 3v5 to get it. In response, I simply told her, look man, lots of stuff happens in these games, but given that objective wasn't why we lost. The fight, whilst they had a buff, was actually the major The fight, whilst they had the buff, was actually the major turning point. If we waited 30 more seconds before engaging that fight, the game might have looked completely different. We went back and forward until she decided to watch the replay. After watching it, she apologized and admitted the fight was the problem, not the buff. I told her it's all good. In the same game, my first and only death came to me, trying to finish off Gragas on 200 HP, and he flash comboed me with his to delete me. With his combo to delete me. Off of my death, the enemy team took 2 inhibitors. I understand that was a major mistake where I lowered the chance of our team winning from making it. We conversed a bit more about how she was just following our top, and I talked to her about how I do that all the time, but you need to know when it's a bad fighter and back off. Long story short, she agreed with my way of thinking, a way of thinking I've adopted since watching you guys, and said that she'll start looking at her own mistakes more from now. Even added our jungler to apologize for flaming him. Sorry for the long story, just thought you might find it cool that somehow in the mess that is solo queue, the message of how to improve and actually enjoy this game can be spread. Thanks, Alan.
Wow, props to him for having the patience to even go through that. You know, that's not an easy thing to do.
Especially just a random stranger on the internet, right? You know?
It shows the actual just sheer difference and contrast in how two people can view the game. How crazy, let's just everyone zoom out for a second, right? We just listen to this statement and we're all nodding along being like, yeah, that's a normal experience. But let's just all zoom out for a second and be like, how is it that we play a game?
The same game.
And you can have people with completely different opinions about how the game should be played. Just let that sink in for a second. We're the same elo bracket. You probably have you should theoretically have a similar-ish game understanding. And you have two people that have completely polar opposite responses in the game. I think it's just fascinating. You know, that the fact that can exist. Like, what other sports where it's like you can have slightly different opinions, but it's like completely different opinions. Yeah, we're talking completely.
You think that doesn't exist in sports?
I don't know. I'm just posing it out there.
I think
does that exist?
So you're saying to the extent that it is in like
to the extent that we've got it here in League of Legends, like you can have people where it's people can have the interpretation where it's not my fault whatsoever. Yeah. It's 100% that guy's fault. And then whereas like in other sports, it's probably like, okay, I can see that, it's like, okay, yeah, that guy maybe influenced the play a bit. But it's like, I mean, I don't know.
Well, going back to poker and chess, there's a pretty much agreed upon way to play each hand and play each opening.
Right, there might be small minor differences. Yeah. It's like this could work as well, but it's like the general public in League, it's like crazy different. Yeah. So I don't know, I just find this fascinating. This as a case study just shows like the mind, someone being logical and like really like breaking down the play, another person just being in la la land, and like that's just in the same elo bracket in the same game, two people chilling. I just find that fascinating.
Yeah,
we just accept that that's just the way League is, but it's kind of not normal in many other environments. You know,
and it's funny as well because League has the replay system that people refuse to look at compared to like other sports. Like, imagine if you're like a soccer team and you instantly had like the replay, like you could like a mistake would happen.
I can't be bothered looking at it.
Yeah, and there's like a screen, like a recording, like the perfect shot, everything. Like, it was just like some normal team. The normal average person has access to this technology in League of Legends and is not used. And people refuse to look at it because their view of what happened in the chaos of solo queue is correct, and no one takes the time.
The pain of being wrong is greater than the feeling of being
look
right.
at the facts.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, two people can also look at the same thing and see something completely different.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, hopefully we'll repeat that because Charlie not having Mike, but he's basically two people can look at the same play. The exact same play, and you're saying that they can have two different opinions.
They can just see different
things. Yes. Yeah, they might tunnel vision on this person should have used this ability. Yep. Yeah, someone could be looking.
Narrative about champions.
Yeah, narrative about champs. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just shows the emotional toll League really, plays on some people, has on some people. Love it. Really good. Thanks, Alan, for spreading the message. And I'm glad to see, ADC Academy member out there, spreading the good word and having a crack.
Good luck getting to Diamond.
Yeah.
Hopefully with the help of the ADC Academy. All right, well, that wraps up our episode today, guys. Good work. Let's keep on improving. 3-block process, season 15.
And I'm going to have a sunburn on one side of my body. I'm going to be red on one side.
Yeah,
and
next
pale on the
time,
other.
Curtis, you just be like white on one side
Yeah.
and then just tan on the other.
Yep. Except reality.
We'll see you guys next week.